Welcome to Literally Books, the podcast. My name is Magda.
And I'm
And
Lindsay.
today we're going to be doing a Cram session on Legendborn and Bloodmarked, the series by Tracy Deonn.
In anticipation of Oathbound coming out. I'm so
I know.
excited.
I'm picking up, as the time that we're recording this, I am picking up my new book tomorrow, and I am so excited. That's going to be my whole week.
Oh no. See, I haven't gotten my notification yet. You're going to be ahead of me again.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It'll be okay. But before we start getting deep into this story, what have you been reading?
Okay, so I've been reading a couple of books that actually came at your recommendation.
Okay.
I am almost done with Frozen River.
I'm really scared to ask, but what do you think?
I really like it. I really like it. To be totally honest, when it started, I was like, I don't know. This feels like it's going to be like a very light treatment of some really heavy subjects around sexual assault and around just being a woman in, what is it, the 19th century?
1700s, so 18th
Oh, it's
century.
18th century.
It's right
Okay, even
before the
earlier.
revolution. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I found some things like a little bit hard to believe. Like the main character has so much autonomy and so much power in her relationship that I felt like, I don't know, is this like an accurate representation? But as the book has gone on, I have fully turned around on it. I really love it. It's got so many elements.
I think I told you this. This has one of my favorite endings. It is a very satisfying ending, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts once you finish it because I think that was my favorite part of the book.
For like a second, I thought they were going to make Ephraim, the husband, bad. And I was like, I will quit this book. I will quit this book. I will light it on fire and I will send Magda a video of it if that's what happens. But it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. So I'm really liking it.
Good. I'm so glad. And which one is the other one?
Okay, the other end of the spectrum is Catalina by Carla Cornello Villavicencio. I love it.
Okay, good. I'm so excited 'cause we got to see her at the Texas Book Festival last year, and we just fell in love with her personality.
She has charisma. That's the best way. Like she has a magnetic pull to her that I find her deeply attractive. But beside that, her writing is deeply attractive too. The book, for those of you that don't know, is basically follows the year in the life of a first year Harvard attendee, I guess, who is undocumented. And it's very heady. She mixes high low. I really like it. It's a short book, but it's a dense read. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what you think of it.
Okay, I do have this one in my TVR for this year, so I will be picking this one up very soon so we can kind of compare notes. I'm so excited that you're liking it because it's always hard when you meet an author and you're like, oh my gosh, I really like them. Please be like, I hope your book is really good because like I love you so much as a person. So I'm really happy to hear that her output was worth it.
But what are you reading? Tell me. You're way ahead of me on books this year. Your bookshelf in the last 2 months of what you've been reading. I posted about this online is ridiculous.
No, I think, well, as you guys know, I procrastinated a little bit on my Legendborn and Bloodmarked reading. So I pretty much crammed that whole thing in 2 weeks, but it was totally worth it. But as soon as I finished, I gave myself a little treat and I read a rom com, and it's been trending all over social media. I'm pretty sure you have seen this going around, which is First Time Caller by BK Borison. And let me tell you, it is the hype, it's worth the hype. It was so good. It is such a cute, adorable story. It's about this 12-year-old that calls into a radio station, and the radio station has this show about like love advice that is kind of by this guy Aiden. He's the one that hosts it, but he's a total cynic. He doesn't believe in love or anything, and the ratings are down. But then this whole like bit of this girl calling in about her mom trying to like improve her dating life just turned the ratings around, and it just kind of takes us into a whole journey. And the premise sounds weird, but it is so funny. The way that this writer did everything, it was just, I was laughing the entire time. This 12-year-old, listen, do you remember what my biggest complaint about Variation was? It was that they had a 10-year-old and I freaking hated her. Like they were trying to make her like this like cute little smart girl, and she was like a manipulative bitch for a 10-year-old. I don't know. I feel bad saying that.
I love that you just call the 10-year-old a bitch. No, they absolutely can be 1000% support.
She was horrible, but not in this book. We have this 12-year-old that is just looking out for her mom, and like they have like this weird mixed family dynamics, and it is just adorable, fun, light read, and it just makes you a believer in love, which is what like a good romance book is supposed to be doing. It was amazing, incredible. Cannot recommend it enough. If you are looking for like a nice, fun romance read, this is it. Like it is totally worth the hype. I loved it. Do you want to take a little bit of a break and maybe let's talk about some book news?
Let's do
All
it.
right. Welcome back, everybody. So now we're going to be talking about some book news. And just to kind of get us started, we got to talk about the Oscars. And I think one of the movies that we were truly like obsessed with was Wicked, which was nominated for a Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Original Score, Best Makeup, Hairstyling, Best Visual Effects, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound. Unfortunately, they only got two, which is still something, but they only won for Best Production Design and Best Costume Design, which is totally worth it. But I don't know, I was a little sad that they didn't get more recognition because they totally deserved more recognition than what they got.
I will never forgive the Academy for not giving Cynthia Erivo something. I mean, her performance, I was in tears. She is something special.
My theory is because they're gonna come out with Wicked 2 potentially, that they're holding out for the Wicked 2 part movie, which is so risky because what if there's like some really freaking good performances and then what? You're gonna just like stack her up and like she might not even get it then, and because they were kind of potentially saving it for end of 2025 instead, which makes me really sad that they kind of have like this weird politics games in this award system. Was like, well, you're gonna have to wait your turn because probably Wicked 2, that's when you'll get your dues, which I hate that.
I just don't get it because one, Mikey Madison is lovely. She's a great actress. I have nothing against her, but like Cynthia Erivo and Demi Moore, for me, are far and away the more experienced, the more consistent, the more I don't know. In my mind, they're just more deserving. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't know if you heard, like, I don't, have you heard, and you can take this out if you want to, but have you heard the way that the voting works? Like, the people that are part of the voting committee, like the academy and all that stuff, when they vote, they get like a package of everything that they're going to have to watch in order to make the decision. And a lot of the voters have said that they don't watch everything that they receive and just kind of vote on like the campaign or how they feel. So it's not really based on the actual deserving of their performance. It's just a lot of campaigning. So it's a lot of politics that go into this voting, which it just kind of sucks. It just makes the process a lot more distrustful. So I don't know. Be better, Academy. I just didn't like that.
Every year. I mean, I'm happy an independent film won. I love that Anora was made on like a $5 million budget. That's really impressive. I just, come on,
I know.
Cynthia.
She killed
Anyway,
it. I really wanted her to win.
it.
Yeah, I really, really wanted her to win. So, and she looked freaking gorgeous too last night. Ugh, love her. Anyways,
Stunning.
What do you have for us?
Okay, so Silvia Moreno-Garcia's book, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, is in development for a TV series. This is the second of her books to be optioned for a TV series. She was also optioned for Mexican Gothic. I don't know if you've read any of her books, but I am absolutely obsessed with her writing. It's so interesting. It's so weird. It's dark. It's Gothic. It's beautiful. This book is a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, but is a coming-of-age novel from the perspective of Dr. Moreau's daughter, Carlotta. It's set in 19th century Yucatan. It's just super weird. There's nothing like it. I'm so hoping that somebody turns this into a television series.
All right. I haven't read, weirdly, I haven't read her stuff yet. I do have Mexican Gothic on my bookshelf and I just haven't read it. So this is just, you gave it a glowing review. I'm going to add it to my TBR. I need to finish that.
I hate horror and I love these books. They're so good and weird and yeah, they're great.
Okay. All right. And then on other news, I'm sure you're familiar with the show Severance. I think we both are obsessed with it. And if you are a fan as we are, everybody knows about the self-help book that we have in the show, which is called The You Are. It's the book that is written by one of the main characters' brother-in-law, Dr. Rickon Laszlo, and is now being published by Apple Books. So you can go and download it for free. It's about an hour-long audiobook. And I cannot wait to read this. I am fascinated to see like the whole book and like what the whole fuss was about because it calls a big stir with the Inis. So I'm excited to see what happened.
It's the second time though that you've said Magda and I were talking offline about this, and you said something about the UUR, and I was like, "What is UUR? What does UUR stand for?" And then I was like, "Oh, the
You
UUR." It's so stupid. I love it so
Even the
much.
cover is kind of it's like what you expect a self-help book to
The
look
turtleneck.
like the
Mhm.
cheesiness of it with like the glowing aura behind it, and it's just like, I don't know, it's pure perfection. It's making fun of everything that is wrong with self-help books for some of them, right? Some of them are really good, but it's just making fun of that genre, and it's just kind of taking it to the next level. So now I want to read it to see if it holds true, or if there's maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll learn something. Who knows?
Pen America released an article called Cover to Cover, revealing the target of school book bans in 2023 and 2024. And no shock, the bulk of books being banned are targeted to characters that are BIPOC and or in the LGBTQ plus community. They indicate that 36% of all banned books feature characters or people of color, and 25% are those included in the LGBTQ plus community. Only 13% of banned books had on the page descriptions of sexual experiences. And what I thought was interesting, what they found is that the bans are prevalently seen in specific genres, and one of those genres are graphic novels. They indicated that they overwhelmingly address things like violence, which were 65% of the banned books, death and grief, 55% of banned books, and abuse were 43%. And I just think it's important to call out. And the reason that these statistics are, I think, significant is because there's often a conversation around if these books are harmful to the audiences that they are geared towards, so children in schools in particular. And you can see that conversation around violence, death and grief, and abuse, those are all things that are extremely important for children to have some sort of relationship with and language for. And it just seems this push toward erasure, this push toward like this happy white environment is so clear from the numbers. It's really disturbing. I really appreciated that they highlighted the most impacted communities, which are obviously LGBTQIA plus and people of color, and these like very realistic themes. It's not lewd acts. These are very real elements of everyday life.
Yeah, and I think, this is what representation really does matter. And to your point, like, we are erasing people's identity. We're making them not be seen, feel like they're not appreciative or appreciated in today's society. And it makes me really sad. And I think we even talked about it like last week, that Julianne Moore's book, Freckle Face, something like that. Her book was banned just because she talked about accepting herself, a kid that had like freckles, like little things that are just seem so like non-offensive. It's just fully everything that has to do about kids or people feeling accepted with who they are. Like now we're going towards a place where it's like, actually, no, you should just conform to what the general population should look like and what makes you special. That's not okay. And it just breaks my heart because I think we're going to see really big consequences of this probably a decade, 15 years from now, about the type of society that we're kind of creating. And I'm just not happy with where we're going with this.
You know what's crazy too, and then we'll get off our soapbox, but do you know who Maurice Sendak is? He's
Mm-mm.
a children's book author who wrote Where the Wild Things Are. And he did an interview with PBS. If you want to go check out their Blank on Blank series. It's animated features of these interviews with significant people in history. And Maurice Sendak is one of those. And he talks about like why he included monsters in that book. And he said because the world is a really scary place for children. Like nothing is familiar, everything is new. It's really hard to tell what is a big deal and what is a small deal. And he was like, and I wanted to give, representation for how kids navigate things that are scary and how to like work through new things and scary things. And that's why Max encounters a bunch of monsters in that book. And I think like just taking this shit away doesn't mean that kids are not going to have a relationship with it. It means they're going to have less resources to navigate it. And it just sucks. That's all.
Yeah. And it does. It does suck. And I think with that,
What doesn't suck, what doesn't suck is this very beautiful book about a child, a black child who is smart and strong, and that is Miss Goddamn Bree.
She's
That would
breaking
be
the
hard.
glass ceiling in the magic world, and we're gonna talk about that here shortly. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So now we're gonna start doing our cram session, and we're gonna start with Legendborn, and Lindsay's gonna get us started.
Legendborn follows 16-year-old Bree Matthews, who leaves her hometown after the death of her mother with her best friend Alice in tow for a specialized pre-college program at UNC Chapel Hill. While there, she stumbles upon a convergence of magical histories that draw from Arthurian legend, interwoven with the legacy of African rootcraft.
All right. So the way that we're gonna be doing this, as everybody hopefully remembers, if you have read this book, all of the books are divided into 4 parts. So we're gonna give you a quick summary of each of the parts. All right. So to kind of get us started, we're gonna talk about part 1 of Legendborn, the order. So, like Lindsay mentioned, we meet Bree Matthews, or Brianna, who is a 16-year-old who has gone through a lot of loss after her mom died in a car accident. Just because of the loss, she decides to go to early college to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with her best friend Alice, which is also like a really nice connection to her, to Bree's mom, because that's actually where she went to school as well. During one of those college party nights, there's a really big fight that breaks out, and Bree just kind of notices that there's this really mysterious guy who we later find out that his name is Selwyn Kane, and he's kind of controlling everything around this fight. There's like some weird lights kind of hovering over the fight, and he just immediately starts like ordering people like to go away, and everybody complies, no questions asked. Bree kind of gets into a little bit of trouble because she went to a party that she was not supposed to go to, so the principal at the school tells her like, you're gonna have to need a chaperone, and this is where we meet my sweet little boy, Nicholas Davis. He's a second year that is asked by the principal to help guide Bree during this time while she's kind of getting adopted into like the whole school process. Then as they kind of start getting together, Bree notices that there's like another big like massive light. So she starts running toward really, really fast, and Nick runs after her. And it turns out that it was a hellhound attack, which is like these little demons, so like little demon monsters that are attacking somebody, and Nick has to save her. He actually takes her to this guy that is kind of healing her, and this is where we're introduced to William, my sweet William, one of my favorite characters in the entire series. And he kind of heals her, and they kind of start talking to her about like some do's and don'ts. They tell her like, hey, this other guy is gonna come in and he's gonna try to erase your memory. Just pretend to erase it, because what I didn't tell you guys earlier is that on the first fight, that cell guy was erasing everybody's memory, and like it took for everybody except for Bree. We have no idea why that is. So Nick learns about these things like, hey, you're gonna have to just tell him that like you did forget and just pretend that way. Otherwise, he's gonna like hurt you or you're gonna get in trouble. After Brie remembers this, she actually has a little bit of a weird flashback to her mom's accident when they were at the hospital, where she remembers that somebody had actually gone to her and had erased her memory, and it's all kind of coming back to her. So she's now kind of putting together that there's something weird happening here, where this magic and everything could potentially have something to do with her mother's death. So Brie starts kind of following Nick and all this magical this magic people that she thinks are associated with it, and then she finds like the big house where they're kind of congregating, and she just kind of pushes her way into it. And it just turns out that she found the night where they're going to be selecting these pages that are going to be kind of introduced into this magical world. And Nick sees her and pretty much forces him to sponsor her so she can be part of that world. And that's kind of where we left up at part 1.
So let's move on to part 2, Discord. Like Magda said, Bree is very interested in learning more about her mother's death and is now aware of this sort of mysterious secret society that Nick is affiliated with, although we're not quite sure why. And she forces his hand by showing up back up at the house and saying that he invited her. And we learn that Nick had actually wanted to step away from this part of his life because he doesn't approve of the way that this order is structured. And we learn that he is King Arthur's descendant, the scion, the main magic wielder, and they are just beginning the process of selecting pages who are basically providing support to the scion during battle. So during this initiation ceremony, the group is attacked by hellhounds, which further convinces Cell that Bree is a potential demon and is bringing these hellhounds onto campus. So he is always after her, always sort of giving her shit and convinced that she's there to hurt Nick, who he has sworn to protect. We learn later that he is what's called Nick's King's Mage, who is responsible for making sure that he is safe. Bree pushes forward and she wants to become a page so that she can be ingratiated into this society and learn more about her mother's death. And we encounter the first test to become a page, which requires her to work in teams of two, where they have to basically escape hellhounds created by Cell and save these two dummies. A lot of the other pages that we're introduced to have had a lifetime of experience and training with weapons and various things. Brianna is an outsider, both in experience, but also most notably, she is the only person of color in this group. And it comes from a totally different background from the rest of these kids, and it's not lost on her at any given moment that she's treated like an outsider. However, she does manage to succeed in this task, and it sort of encourages this sort of flirtatious relationship between Nick and Brianna. While this is going on, Bree's sort of outlandish behavior creates a lot of tension with her and her best friend Alice, who is not used to her acting like this. And so Alice reaches out to Bree's dad, who says, "Look, Bree, you got to go to therapy. I think you're not processing your mother's death. I think you're in this new environment. I think you're going out of control." And he introduces her to Patricia, who was a distant friend of Bree's mother when she went to college, who was supposed to serve as her therapist. And in this meeting, we find out that Patricia knows that Brianna's mother was a root crafter, which is a different kind of magic, totally separate from the order, which has this history in very white, very Arthurian magic. Root comes from a black history, and Patricia really wants to introduce Brianna to this side of magic, which is much more rooted in equality, in necessity.
So this kind of takes us over to part 3, which is roots. So now that we know that Patricia can potentially be able to help Bree to kind of find and understand her magic a little bit better. So Patricia takes her down this memory walk, which is pretty much a way for Bree and her to be able to walk down their ancestors' life and learn a little bit of what's going on. Normally, the way that this works is that the ancestors will show them a little bit of like their memories and what they went through. And this really helped Bree to kind of understand where a lot of this power was coming from. During this process, though, it wasn't just a regular memory walk. The ancestors were actually able to interact with Bree, which was something that Patricia had never experienced before. And Bree's just kind of taken aback. During here, we're able to see the birth of a demon that kind of comes into play really later in the second book. But this kind of gives Bree an epiphany during this memory walk where she realizes that Cell might be a demon. And apparently this is like a known thing because this is where we learn that the Merlins, or the King's Mages, which are all descendants of the Merlins, have to fight this battle between being a demon. They're like half demon and like a half magic being, and they have to constantly be fighting this battle. So this is kind of where Bree learns this, and she's kind of like a little bit nervous about it. But anyways, they kind of have to keep going through all of these tests to be able to become a page. So we have our second test. And the second test is that they have to look for these like magical objects that are hidden all throughout campus. And you have to do it with somebody that is going to be supervising, that you're not going to be cheating. And she gets paired with Cell. And this is like, Cell gets like really intense in this scene where he pretty much is threatening Bree because he really thinks that she is a problem, she is the demon, and she is the one that's causing all of this havoc. And he almost pretty much kills her, but what saves her is that these crazy little demon creatures, I think it's like hell foxes, show up and they're just going at them. So they have to work together to try to like survive. And this actually creates a little bit of a bond between them because they both almost died being attacked by them. And Cell realizes like, okay, yeah, you don't know anything. You're obviously not a demon. You're just like a dumb little girl, pretty much. It's like how the way that he treats her. So that creates like a little unsaid bond between them just because of that trauma. And then we move on to our third test. It's all about sparring, and it's like a 1-to-1 fight, and for them to be able to defend themselves, be able to fight. And surprisingly, Bree does really well, but this is all thanks to Nick. He brings her like a personal trainer in a way, which is Jillian, who helped train Nick earlier. So they try to kind of help her learn a couple of tactics, and also Cell helps her like, hey, you need to utilize your own strengths to be able to fight, and she's actually comes on top. I was a little scared for Bree there in those sparring events. But during all of this, just because of what happened, Nick does realize that Cell almost killed Bree. Nick's dad also threatens Cell like, hey, you need to behave. If you're gonna be treating people like this, I'm gonna kick you out of the order, which is a really bad thing for Merlins because they can kind of succumb to their demon blood. All of these king's mages or the descendants of Merlin, because they're half demons, one way for them to be able to kind of help control that is by doing oaths. So all of these oaths kind of generate some sort of magic that can kind of give them a little bit of like a drunken feel a little bit, but it helps balance the tendencies for demon, and that's how they keep track of everything. When Nick finds out that he almost killed Bree, and he was gonna be excommunicated, like Cell was pretty down, and Bruce like, well, let me help you. Like, let's find out exactly like what's going on, and then decide to break into Nick's dad's house, and then they actually find out a couple of things that were kind of scary. So they learned that Cell's mom supposedly was the one that opened the gates all the way back like 20 years or I don't know how long ago, and she was the one that was causing mayhem. And what I mean by opening the gates is like in order for the demons to come into the human plane, there's these gates where they can just kind of come through, and that's like we're trying to avoid that because that's what's going to generate war. And apparently Cell's mom kind of succumbed to her demon blood, and that's what kind of triggered her to start opening these gates, and that's why she was sent away. She also used to be like a really strong king's mage, but like they just didn't trust her anymore, and she was pretty much imprisoned and sent away. And they took Cell away because they didn't want the same thing to happen to him. The other thing that we learned during this break-in at the house is that Bree's mom was a witness to a magical event, and the Order was keeping track of Bree's mom all throughout her life. So they were gonna just go check in on her, make sure that she didn't realize that there was magic happening or anything. And then they were just gonna keep going. And in this report, they said like, yeah, she looks like she doesn't remember anything. She's good to go. And we kind of learned that Bree's mom truly just died in a car accident, which is pretty heartbreaking. Because I think Bree was really thinking that maybe like the Order had something to do with it. And at this point of the book, it just seemed like it was just a straight up accident.
From there, we lead into the last section of the book, which is called Splinter. And at this point, everything is sort of going awry. Bree is feeling really isolated because Alice, her best friend, doesn't know anything about magic, and she doesn't want to put her in a bad position by telling her anything that could put her in danger. She's very new into the Society of the Order, so though she has friends in Nick and William, and sort of this blossoming friendship with Cell, again, she feels very much an outsider in this group. And so Bree's dad, after getting a call from Alice, who is super worried about her, comes to visit, and he brings with him this bracelet that was left to her by her mom. It's a charm bracelet. First of all, let's talk about Bree's. Bree's dad is the most amazing person ever. He is like peak father. I just have to say that really quickly. I am obsessed with his character. He's just a great, wonderful, beautiful parent who truly cares about his daughter. And in this moment, when Bree opens this box, there is a memory attached to it. So Bree is transported back to this moment where she learns that she comes from a line of magic, root crafter magic, which is very different from the magic of the Order. We learn from Patricia. It's based in balance. So essentially, ancestors in root crafters lend magic to root users when they need it and only when they need it, whereas people in the Order maintain these oaths. So they're taking the magic through blood, through death, and they experience what's called abatement, which is meaning they're shortening their lives in order for this magic. So you get this duality of the differences in the kind of magic. And the duality in Bree's family in their root magic is that mothers only get to live a very short amount of time with her daughters in exchange for this magic, which is why her mother dies, her mother's mother has died, this goes on. We also learn through a visit to Patricia that there are different kinds of root crafters. So we're introduced to Mariah, who is a medium. So Mariah helps Bree meet her grandmother, Vera, her mother's mother, who gives her a bunch more information and who now kind of lives in her head because she's opened the door to these ancestors. She's not really sure how to close it yet. And so she has this voice in the back of her head. And it's in this context where Bree attends a gala where squires get formally chosen by their scions. where pages get formally chosen by their scions to become future squires. So it's in this gala, a bunch of shit is happening. We're introduced to Nick's father, who seems like a nice guy, but there's something nefarious going on. He has a king's mage, Isaac, who is a straight up racist, and we learn in this moment a lot of the members of the order are racist. They say outwardly racist things to Bree. They make her feel like an outsider. There's a lot of crap going on with the other pages. And it's in this context that Nick announces, actually, I want Brianna to be my page. There's a huge uproar. They kind of sneak away in a back room. They share a kiss. It's this beautiful moment where they cement their romantic relationship. And then shit happens. Hellhounds attack. There is demons all over campus, and Nick is sort of stolen away. Bree runs off to try and figure out what's going on. They end up in this cave system, she and Cell, where there's hunting to see where Nick has gone. And a bunch of people die. We learn that one of the pages has been actually inhabited by a demon this entire time and had been letting other demons in. We're introduced to a bunch of other information about the magic. There's a huge fight in this cave system. And ultimately, what happens is Bree saves the day by pulling Excalibur. And it is in this moment that we learn that she, not Nick, is the descendant of King Arthur and is first in line to the order. What else am I missing? Because there is so much in this section, Magda. Chime in.
Yeah, so we do learn also that Nick is the descendant of Lancelot. So that's potentially why Bree and Nick felt such a tight connection to each other. And then the book pretty much ends with Nick being taken and abducted by his dad. And we don't know where they're taking him. And Bree is determined to get him back. Dun, dun, dun.
We left out 9 million things. These are bare bones basics to get you going. There's so much nuance in this book, but yeah, it's a very big surprise. So
yeah, the world building on book one, I think we were talking about that. It is quite beautiful and it pays off really well on book two, which we're going to be talking about here shortly. All right, so now we're moving on to book two, Bloodmarked, and here's a quick summary. Bloodmarked continues where Legendborn left off, with Bree grappling with Nick's disappearance and her newly discovered identity as the scion of Arthur.
So part one is called Strength, and it picks up 1 month after where Legendborn left off. There's been a bunch of things that are going on. We learn a lot more about the governing body of the order. There are these people called the regents, who are essentially the people in charge that are not the scions, but a kind of a configuration of a bunch of powerful people, some of whom are lieges, meaning people who were scions but not ultimately called to the power of their ancestral Arthurian knights. They're just a bunch of powerful people, and they are essentially guarding Bree at any given time on the campus. So she's living in the big fancy house that the order owns. She's not supposed to leave, although she tries to try and get a better sense of her magic. Cell is constantly pissed at her for putting herself in danger, because hellhounds are after her at any given moment. And during a funeral for the people that were lost in the battle at the end of Legendborn, including Evan Cooper, who was the person that was kind of inhabited by a demon, we learn that the regents have a not so great plan of trying to cover up what's going on, which is that these demons are all coming into the universe, that Camlan, the war between the demons and the order, is coming. And instead, they're going to cover it all up and blame Cell. Because Nick is not there. He's still missing. Cell is required by his oaths to serve Nick. And in Nick's absence, his demon sort of nature is potentially going to take over. And so the regents are just going to try and shush things up and keep it quiet. They have not acknowledged publicly that Bree is the scion of Arthur, and she's supposed to go through this ritual where she formally kind of takes on his power. And so we're sort of waiting on that power to come in. We do get various visits from Bree to Patricia and Mariah again, but she's trying to keep the two kind of separate because she doesn't want the order to find out about this other kind of magic at all.
All right, so this kind of takes us over to part two, power. So we're now going through the rite for Bree, so she can actually take over fully as a full scion of King Arthur. And this kind of takes her into a quick of a memory walk, not just with her ancestors, but also she starts to see King Arthur's memories as well. So she kind of sees like the round table, she sees Lancelot, and in there, instead of Lancelot, she sees Nick. So somehow during her memory walk, she's not only able to see the ancestors and like past history, she's actually able to communicate with Nick. And Nick tells her, "Do not look for me. I like this is really dangerous, so stop looking for me." This kind of creates, when she's in this memory walk, like a really powerful magic surge. And when she wakes up, she has all of the regions pretty much in defense mode, and they have an injection and they're just like inject her with something, and then she just passes out. Where she wakes up, turns out they took her to like this super secret facility where they pretty much, the injection took away all of her powers except her root, but most of her powers. So she felt like really empty. Like she had this big hole where she wasn't able to communicate with Arthur. She wasn't able to communicate with Vera. And somehow she learned that Erebus, he has been mesmering her. And by mesmering her, he has been erasing her memory over and over and over again. And they kept doing this for over 3 days. They would just like wake her up, ask her a bunch of questions, and then mesmer her again. And this just kept going on and on and on. We also learned that William has also been taken, and he's there just kind of looking out for her. And when, for whatever reason, they left him alone, and Bree pretty much tells William, like, hey, you gotta hurt me. That's gonna be what is going to withhold the mesmering to keep happening. So he hurts her. She's able to like resist the mesmering from Erebus. And when they take her one last time to like all of these fancy region people, she gives a really impassionate speech about why they don't care, why they want her to stay hidden, which comes down all about race. They pretty much don't want her because she doesn't look like any of them. They don't want the people to freak out, and it all comes down to what the color of her skin looks like. They're like, you have no idea, but I have realized that pretty much the only reason why I am the descendant of King Arthur is because one of the slave owners raped my ancestor, and this is why I'm here, and you refuse to accept that fact. They pretty much just ignore her, and they're like, oh, that's cute. We have a dinner reservation, so we're just gonna mesmer you and we're out. So they tried to do that. That didn't work, obviously, but they don't know that. So they just kind of send her away for a little bit in one of like super fancy rooms, thinking that she's been mesmered. A couple of days pass by, and then randomly in one of her food options, she finds a little bit of an earpiece, and the earpiece is gonna give her a get out of jail card, and she has to follow all of the instructions, which she does, and she's able to escape the facility, only to find that Jillian, the person that helped train her, and Alice have kind of initiated this whole massive rescue plan to be able to get her away from the facility and from this evil region people. That was like one of my favorite things. I love that chapter. I love that part so much because I was like,
when Alice was there, I was like,
Alice! I was like, why
I love
is
Alice.
Alice such a badass?
I think Alice is my favorite character.
Yeah, she was great.
Honestly. Okay.
I can't wait because she's gonna have power because she's gonna wake up. She's gonna have power. It's okay. We're gonna talk about this.
Part 3, control. Alice! That's the first thing I have to say. Alice is such a badass. So Alice has teamed up with a bunch of lieges and people who are more loyal to the order than they are to the regions. And that's an important distinction because the order are the scions of Arthur and his knights who have taken on the power of their ancestors in order to fight Cumlon. The regions, they're just a fucking governing body. They're concerned about maintaining power. And so those groups are very separate. So these people who are most devoted to the lines of the order, to making sure that demons cannot cross over, are on Bree's side because she is the true scion of Arthur. So they whisk her away after saving Sel and William to a safe house in Georgia. It's in the middle of nowhere. They're in the safe house, and the person who owns the safe house is actually not on the side of the order, but is in fact going to use a demon to try and kill Bree. He has a lot of feelings about how the order treats the scions and their pages. He has lost someone close to him. He's got a bunch of feels about it, and so he's a traitor. So in the process of them trying to escape, they end up at this small, even smaller town. She's going to go find Patricia and Mariah, who she has previously hidden away so that they wouldn't be found by the order, but now they have nowhere else to turn. So she goes there, and on the way there, she stops at this bar. And the bar has a bunch of magical people in it, and that is where we meet Valak, who is a Cambion, aka a half demon, half human, much like Cell. He brokers deals between humans and demons, so for things like power to get their way. And initially, Bree thinks, oh, this is the guy who sold me out. But we learn, in fact, he is not. He is the great, 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 great uncle of Mariah, and a relationship to Lucille, who is Mariah's aunt, who's like a very powerful root crafter in the region. So we get to see the other side of magic. We get to see all of these root crafters, this history. And it's at this bar that we realize that Valak, who is maybe a morally gray character, is on Bree's side. And he reveals to her in this moment that Cell has been mesmering her because his demon nature is actually coming to the forefront in Nick's absence because he has no one to serve, and he's been starting to look more like a demon, and he didn't want Bree to know. So it's this moment where we see this burgeoning relationship between Cell and Bree. They're starting to become closer and closer, and she feels like he broke his trust, and she has to decide in this moment, like, am I going to forgive him? Am I going to pursue this relationship? There's a lot of simmering things happening. We also learn during a memory walk that Nick is under attack. Cell can feel that he's in danger. They rush off and find Nick and his father and Isaac, who are hidden away in a cabin. At the same time, unfortunately, the King's Maid shows up. There's a big battle. Nick's father dies. Nick has a moment where he can leave with Bree and Cell and opts not to, for reasons that we're not really sure on, but it's just this heartbreaking moment where he has a chance to be close with them and chooses not to, and he flees into the night. One of the terrible regents, Erebus, goes after Bree and basically tears her to shreds, and she passes out, and Cell is responsible for basically keeping her alive. And we move to part 4,
which is volition. So after Bree is recovering because she was like super injured after the last battle with Erebus and some of like little demons that showed up, we also learned that Cell pretty much sacrificed himself in order to keep her alive. Like, he almost died in order to do it, but they were both safe and everything. So Lucille decided, hey, it's time for us to go to Volition, which is this sacred plantation land that is a magical place for people that is going to make her safe, and they're going to be able to kind of teach her a little bit more root. Once we go in there, we learn that this whole area is fully protected by the ancestors' energy and power, and only people that are descendants of slavery are able to go in. So Cell, Alice, some other people, they're only able to walk in after Bree invites them in, which is quite beautiful. The amount of protection that all of the ancestors are putting in order to kind of be able to keep Bree safe. Bree starts kind of trying to figure out and start working and trying to understand her power with her ancestors. In one of the memory walks, she tries to ask her ancestors, how do I do this? And none of the ancestors are really able to tell her how to control her power, which makes her really upset, which creates a big powerful energy that breaks the dome protection for a little bit, which kind of comes back up, but that will be key here. Cell tells her, hey, don't worry about it. It was really quick. Let's calm down and maybe let's go visit Nick. So all three of them go visit Nick in a memory walk. They all have kumbaya and they have like a nice little moment together in this little memory walk. He's only able to hold them for shortly, but pretty much this kind of teaches Nick and Cell that they're able to do this memory walk as well, which is going to be key for later. Then one night, we learn that it's Bree's birthday. And Cell is really thoughtful, and he's like, hey, let me give you a little present. So he takes her out of the little dome, and he shows her like a nice little, hey, here's this waterfall, here's these fireflies, and they have this nice little moment together where they kiss, and it's really cute. And then they go back to the dome, and then guess who's outside of the dome? All of the regents are there. So they have to go back and, try to sneak into the dome and figure out, like, what the heck do we do now? Because all of these people have found us. So what do we do? So Erebus is outside and he's like, I'm going to make this big speech and I'm going to convince Bree that she needs to come out. And the way that he's going to do that is by showing him that he has Patricia as a hostage, which is really sad. So Bree is freaking out. She's like, what the heck am I going to do? And the only thing that she can think of is like, okay, I'm going to summon Arthur. Arthur is going to take over my body and he's going to save Patricia, which he does. He's like, cool, I'm taking over. I'm going to do this. So he goes outside, but then, he destroys everybody, all of the regions, leaves Erebus there. But then Arthur is like, oh, actually, I really like this. So I'm not going to give you the body back. So I'm just going to stay as Bree now. Bye. So it's really bad. During this whole battle, Alice gets hurt. Cell is freaking out because Arthur is there and not Bree. So then the regents tell Arthur now, is like, hey, do you want to come see your round table? And he's like, sure. So they go and see the round table, which turns out it was all a plot in order to get King Arthur there, in order to kill Bree, because they're just kind of want to be able to get rid of Bree because she is not the person that they want in charge of all of this order.
Oh, yeah, and just one quick important thing there too. So they can't kill Bree right away because if they kill a scion of Arthur while they have their power, they basically end the order completely. So they have to keep her alive and search for the next person in line to make sure that they're at the ready. And it's a really interesting moment because they're trying to search through records in slavery to see who the next person in the bloodline is. And it's just this interesting call out to say, like, they're only getting first names because this historical record is treating these people like property instead of like ancestral records. And so they're having a really hard time, which basically keeps Bree safe in this moment because they can't find who the next person in the bloodline actually is.
Yeah, exactly right. They just kind of want her to put her away, and then once they do, they're gonna kill her. Meanwhile, Bree is in the dream world. She's just like walking around King Arthur's memories, and then out of nowhere, she sees like there's this big crown that used to belong to this guy called the Shadow Hunter that King Arthur used to hunt in the past. And as soon as she touched that crown, it pretty much made all of the dreams live. And we see that Lancelot and Merlin come in and they're trying to talk to Bree, and Bree's like, nah, this is not real. So she uses all of her power to fight them. But then we, as the readers, learn that actually the Merlin is Cell, and Cell is trying to kind of protect her and like make her stop and realize that, hey, no, 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 this is happening. You have to stop. But she doesn't. And Cell has to use pretty much eat up all of her power, which pretty much leads him over to succumb to her demon side, which is really sad. As soon as Brie realizes this, it's a little too late. She wakes up and she's just like, what the heck is going on? She sees a whole bunch of the pages, science, a whole bunch of other people that she didn't recognize, just looking at her like, hey, what do we do now? And then that's kind of when we learn a few things. Cell is in like a coma, or pretty much already succumbing to his to being a demon. Alice is in a coma after the battle when King Arthur was battling with Erebus, which is really sad. So Bree is kind of freaking out. But then weirdly, somebody is around, and Bree says like, hey, I know you're out there, and Erebus comes out, but Bree realizes that it's not really Erebus, it's another demon, and it's the Shadow Hunter, which we then, pretty early on in the book, we learn that her ancestors have made a deal with this hunter that in order for them to be able to use the power and keep them safe, this Shadow Hunter was able to pick one person in their line and take all of her powers. So Bree starts talking to these guys who used to be Erebus. So Erebus had been dead for a while. And like we talked about it, we saw this in the book one, where these demons can look like humans and they're just kind of passing themselves within the order. But Bree pretty much offers like, hey, I'll go with you. You can teach me how to fight. And the only thing that I'm asking you in return is that you can take Cell to his mom, because we do know that the only person that might be able to save him, it's his mom. So, which he does. So he takes him to wherever she is. And then Bree decides to go with the hunter, where she's going to learn all about her power. And then whenever she's ready, he's pretty much going to take over her power. The end.
So much to take over at the end. I think it's interesting too because the book four one, there's a few things that are important to take away from this, which is we're introduced to the factions of magic a lot more in the second book. So in the memories, we're also introduced to the Morgaines, who is Arthur's sister, who has her own faction of magic because she's been sort of excommunicated from the order because she's a woman. So they have a whole separate thing, and she's going to play. I'm guessing she's going to play a big role in the next book because she shows up at the end. We're introduced to Erebus, like Magda said, who represents this magic called bloodcraft, which is essentially people who make blood oaths in order to exchange for magic, which is separate from Root, who draws magic from the ancestors. And we learn that Bree is sort of the nexus of all three of these kinds of magic. She is a descendant of Arthur. Her mother is a blood crafter because an ancestor in her maternal line made a deal with the Shadow King, like Magda said, in order for protection for basically people that were hunting them when they tried to escape from slavery. And then she comes from this history of rootcraft, which draws power from the ancestors. So it's a really cool tie-in to all of these different things that you're learning throughout the other books.
Yeah, this was by far my favorite. I love book two. Book two was incredible. I cannot wait. The way that this series is going, I have really high expectations for Oathbound. I feel like it's gonna be even better than book two if Tracy keeps it. I have full faith that she's gonna do it. I'm so excited. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have any theories going into book three?
I think the Morganes are going to be really important in book 3. I think that we've not seen the last of Arthur rooting his little head around places where he shouldn't be. I think something's going to happen with Alice.
Oh,
I don't know.
yes. You're absolutely right. Because at the end of the book, we learned that William tried to put in so much power to try to heal her. And he tells Bree, like, the magic is not leaving her, it's still within her. And I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to this because Alice is going to be a full on badass, especially with power. She is so smart. She gets them out of trouble so many times. So her plus power is going to be incredible.
Alice is my favorite character because she really shows like that being just a smart woman, a smart, observant woman is a power in and of itself without any magic. So her plus magic, exactly like you're saying, is the coolest idea. I'm obsessed with her and Bree as a pairing. They're a beautiful pairing.
I really love that. And we've talked about it in some of the books when we create like a female friendship, like the secondary friend is always in the background. And that's not the case here. Alice is in the forefront. She is the one that's helping Bree. She is the one taking decisions and giving her counsel in a way, like advising her on like what to do and how to act, which is so cool. And I love it because they're equals. And in a lot of books, the best friend is just like, oh, let's bring them in for some comedic, I don't know, levity or whatever. And she has a lot of things that are going to play in the future of this book, I feel like.
Their bond is so beautiful to me because we learn in book 1 like they're sort of a part of their friendship. It's not the basis of their friendship, but a part of their friendship is that they are both non-white characters in a predominantly white town. So Alice's family is Vietnamese, I believe, and Bree is in one of the few black families in the town that they're from. And there's this moment that I think is like one of this just like a really cool small call out, and which is why I think Tracy Deonn is such an amazing writer. Like she interweaves these very heavy things in this like very good fantasy, where Alice in like a show of her friendship asks Bree's mom to teach her how to braid her hair. And so in one of the books, like when they're just trying to get this rest and Bree's been fighting and like she's just so freaking stressed, Alice braids her hair in this moment of like intimacy between them to like take something off her plate. And I just think it's like it just like really, I don't know. I thought it was so touching. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I can't wait to see where their relationship goes. I really do hope Alice wakes up in book 3 and we get to see a little bit more of her journey.
Are you team Cell or team Nick?
Um, I think the book is leading us to be Team Cell, which I'm a little sad because I loved Nick in book 1. I think what Nick did in book 1 for Bree's confidence was so important. He was the one that was like always knew that she was powerful. He always knew that she was more than she thought she was. And I think he did so much for her being, and I love that, and I think it has a special place in my heart. But I feels like Tracy's gonna take us through Team Cell. But in my book, you know me, I love a good guy, and he just seems like a nice guy, and he just knew her from the very beginning. So I don't know what's gonna happen. What
Hmm.
about you? I'm guessing your Team Cell.
I don't know. I've never been in this position before. I love Cell. I do. I love an underdog. I really relate with someone who's just so pissed at feeling like unlovable and misunderstood and not knowing where to place it, and like giving her these moments of vulnerability. Like one of the things in the book is that he tells her like carry on, and we don't know what that means. And then you learn it has like a lot of meanings. A lot of is like love and like these like very he's giving Bree something that he doesn't give other people. And I find that to be a very toxic draw to me in a character. But to be honest, I don't want any of them to get together. I don't.
They're so young. Everybody's so young in
Yeah.
this book. So I like, and that's the thing to me. Like, I want to see where this really. I love what the dynamic does for each of them because they do bring the best in each other and they're growing. They're all like these are 16 to 18-year-olds. So,
Mm-hmm.
and they act like it. There were times that I was pissed at all of them. That I was like, oh my gosh, these kids.
Yeah.
But so I really love the dynamic. I think to your point, taking it back to Alice, what Tracy has done building these relationships and how much of a bond they have created within each other is quite beautiful. And I'm not gonna forget my good boy William. I love freaking William. The way that he treats Bree, and he gets mad at her because she feels like the only reason why they care for her is because she's the son of Arthur. And like William at some point just like snaps at her and is like, do you really think that's why I'm like giving up my life for you? Like, that's not it. Like, I care for you, you're my friend, like I love you so much, and you cannot see that. And that just kind of got a little special place in my heart because I think he is fighting for her. He is trying to do everybody around them. Like, I think I just love the tight bond that they have created with each other.
I agree. I don't know what else there is to say other than like I am counting the days to Oathbound. I'm annoyed at myself for not having read these earlier. I think Tracy Deonn is just a crazy good writer.
Yeah.
Just so good.
Yeah, really good job. I think book one, again, it's gonna be a lot of blood building, a lot of blood building. It's gonna be it's a lot of world building. But book two, it picks up like crazy. So much happens. I cannot wait for book three.
All right, should we end it there?
Let's do it. Thank you for listening to Literally Books, the podcast,
where we say what we read
and we mean what we say. Bye.